What is up, everyone? Right next to me here on the desk are all the parts for my new PC build. This build is going to be my kind of general use workbench slash office PC for anything I need Windows for, or for any kind of experimentation, or just a general build to have around here in the office. This is going to be taking over the duties from my Doom PC. That PC is getting a little bit old. It's a Sandy Bridge platform, and although I probably could have just done a CPU and motherboard swap on that system to bring it up to speed a little bit, as you guys know, I definitely wanted to do a new build in this lovely new old stock Evercase Beige PC case. If you have not seen that video, it's definitely worth checking out. That is the perfect prequel to this episode, or rather this series of episodes. In that episode, we discussed the case in a lot of detail, and thank you so much for the lovely comments on that video. It's lovely to see that you guys kind of share my passion for this stuff. There's just something about it. So that's why I'm really excited to be putting a build into this case. It is not going to be easy. What we've got planned is ridiculous. By the way, when watching this video, this is definitely not a tutorial, and nothing about this is really going to make sense. Yes, we're going to end up with hopefully a usable and functional system, but it's definitely not a sensible system in any way. We're going to have a lot of fun with this build. We're also going to introduce a little bit of danger with this build as well. So it's definitely not a follow along thing whatsoever, but that's going to make it all the more fun. You guys probably saw weeks and weeks ago, I put a post up on Instagram with all of these parts in this exact same position, and I've been waiting here for weeks to find an opportunity to start filming this for you guys. It's been torture having this stuff here. So it's one of the hottest days of the year. My fan has recently broken. I've ordered another one on Amazon Prime. It's not coming till tomorrow, so it's absolutely baking in here. But I think that's just going to add to the overall stress involved with trying to put this together. So good luck. This is going to be one hell of a series to get through, I think. So strap in. We're going to be here for a good while. So I know I posted that photo, which was pretty much this exact shot, but I just had to show you guys again just how ridiculous all of these parts are. One or two other things actually arrived after I took that photo. So there are a couple of extra bits here that you won't have seen. So if you've looked at that photo closely, like some people have, and kind of guessed exactly some of the crazy things that I'm gonna do, well done, hats off, brilliant detective work, but we do have some extra stuff here that I did not show in that initial photo. So let's try and work our way through the parts. This in itself is probably gonna take sort of half a day to get through. First things first is one of the only parts that I've bought brand new. This is the MSI B450 Gaming Plus Max motherboard. This was the absolute cheapest full ATX motherboard that I could find at the time of recording. I think this was around 70 quid on Amazon. I didn't necessarily need to buy this. I do have an A320 board, another MSI board just floating around, but that one's micro ATX. And with this being a full-size ATX case, I really wanted to fill the case up as much as possible, not have that big gaping void at the bottom with half of the PCI expansion area just kind of empty. I wanted the full-size board. Plus, I've recently built a micro ATX system, the main system that I put together that's currently in my living room. So I definitely wanted to get a full-size ATX board. Plus, I just generally prefer them anyway, so I decided to splash out and get a new one of these. I did look out for some eBay deals, but nothing was really popping up, and this was pretty much a steal anyway. But this is sort of lower-end board, not super low-end or anything, but yeah, it's got everything I need and lots of stuff that I don't need as well. So it's going to be perfect for this build. Hiding behind the RAM there is the GPU. So this is a PowerColor Red Devil Radeon RX 580. So this is a nice card. This is the 8 gig version, I believe. Yeah, pretty sure it's the 8 gig. A huge shout out to Joe. I bought this from Joe. I've got a marketplace set up in the IMNC Nerdy Natters Discord server, and it's been really handy actually to post stuff in there. It's surprising the stuff that you guys have got. So Joe, huge thanks for the lovely deal on this RX 580. I wanted an AMD GPU in this system because we're going to be using an AMD CPU, and I'm a little bit of an AMD fanboy. I kind of like the underdog when it comes to the GPUs, so yeah, looking forward to the RX 580. I also just want to give Joe an extra thank you because this was so thoughtful. After that epic 3-hour Mac Pro episode that I made, Joe was kind enough to send over, at the same time as the graphics card, as an additional gift, he sent over a copy of macOS 10 Snow Leopard because I expressed my sadness at the fact that I'd lent my copy to somebody years ago and haven't seemed to receive it back, and I don't know who's got it. So I kind of told that story in that big 3-hour video, and yeah, he gave me a copy of Snow Leopard. So Joe, thank you so much, man. That is so thoughtful of you. And I was delighted when I opened the box and saw this, just absolutely delighted. So thoughtful, so thank you. Next up, guys, is the memory. So we have got, do you know what's so cool here is we've got no side window, we've got no lighting, nothing like that. So it really does not matter what color the components are. Already we've got a black and red motherboard, we've got a black and red GPU, so they match, but now we're on to the bright blue memory. So yeah, it just does not matter. So we've got some Skill Ripjaws here. This is, I believe, a 16 gig kit. So we've got four gig sticks here, I believe it is. Anyway, DDR4 something speed that we'll check out. Hang on, let me try and read this stuff. It's been so long. So this is DDR4 3000, and I think it's 8 gig of sticks. So this PC is gonna have 32 gigs of RAM if I can get all of the RAM to work simultaneously. So that's wild. I bought this RAM at the same time as I picked up the 3900X from Brian. I also bought this RAM from him because I knew it would come in handy, and Brian gave me a lovely deal on that. So yeah, putting it to good use in this system. If I can only get 2 sticks to work, or if I decide that 16 gigs is enough, then I can use the other 16 gigs for something else, or I can just stick all 32 in here, which is probably what I'm gonna do. We are gonna put a SATA SSD in here. This is not gonna be the main boot drive. This is gonna be a secondary drive. I'm possibly gonna experiment with some kind of Linux distro on this machine. So you guys that have been nagging me for years and years to check out some Linux stuff, I will install something at some point and give it a go, and this is going to be the SSD for that. So this is a Kingston Hyper X 240 gig drive, and again, this is from Brian. Brian chucked this in for free, so thank you very much, Brian. All this stuff is really coming in handy. Okay, here's where stuff starts to get a little bit sketchy. We're coming into the crazy little bits and pieces here, so not so bad. We've got a fan extension there. We're aiming for the ketchup and mustard cabling throughout the build, of course. For authenticity, this is a beige case. We have got a Molex splitter here, and then we have got our 2 lovely dual Molex to 8-pin PCIe power connectors for our GPU there. So as you can see, that is going to be interesting to say the least. I think before we come down onto this more crazy stuff at the bottom here, we'll kind of whiz on up here and take a look at some of this stuff. So we've got the beige power cable that came with the Evercase case. I ordered this from the Evercase website. I wanted the proper beige power cable to go with the beige build. We have got an SSD adapter for the 2.5-inch drive, just a random Corsair one I had in my drawer. This will allow us to put the SSD properly in the spare 3.5-inch bay, which is nice. We've got a beige SATA optical drive. This was a part I was looking for, and again, the marketplace on Discord was very, very handy there on the IMNC Nerdy Natters server. Link to that server is in the description if you guys haven't joined yet. Our lovely friend Will the Plank, the tech plank himself, hooked us up with this drive. Will, thank you so much. Completely free of charge as well on this one, so huge thank you, Will. And I grabbed the note he gave me, actually. I was in 2 minds about actually including this note in the in the video. I'm not going to read it, but I'll put it there, and if anyone wants to pause and read that, then they are more than welcome. And the amazing thing that Will did for me as well is he did give me another one of these Samsung drives, an identical one in black. So if the drive does not work, or more likely if I blow the drive up, then I can swap the beige faceplate onto the black drive and I'll still have a working drive. So Will is very thoughtful there. I think it's because the keying is broken on the SATA power port on the back, so it's likely that I will plug the SATA power in the wrong way and blow the drive up. Plus he knows my track record anyway, so he's just given me a handy little backup there. Obviously, coming down to the star attraction, which is kind of hidden, we have the Evercase beige case itself. This is a mid-tower ATX case from about 20 years ago, give or take. New old stock. Again, if you haven't seen my video about that, then go and check it out. Here we have got, again from Evercase, new old stock. Oh man, I love this. Just cooler for hard drive. The hard drive cooling kit. Oh yeah. This is a 5.25-inch bay hard drive, 340mm fans, or is it 360mm fans? Yeah, they're not gonna be 60s, they're 40s. I think it's 340mm fans across the beige faceplate here, and then they cool your drive. So we've got 2 of those to accompany our 2 hard drives. So the drives we're going to be putting in this system are one 1TB Western Digital Caviar Blue drive and one Seagate Ironwolf NAS drive. That is also 1TB, I believe. They both came from Brian free of charge. So again, Brian, thank you. And so did this. This is our boot drive. This is a 1TB NVMe. I believe this is a Western Digital drive as well. It's a WD Blue, I think. Lovely stuff there. That's going to be our main Windows boot drive. Again, using up a lot of these spare parts that I've been given, which is absolutely wonderful. Coming around to the brains of the operation, we've got our old faithful Ryzen 5 3600. This is the initial CPU that I did put into my gaming build that I've recently put together. Lovely, lovely CPU. But as you know, I temporarily retired it for the 3900X that I put in there. I was going to put this into another little random build and just sell it off, but instead, this is going into my lovely new office PC right here, so that is definitely cool. Over here we have a power supply situation. So this is the power supply that came with the system, a 360 watt Fireball PSU. And then under it here we have a 300 watt, I believe, or was it 350 watt Seasonic unit, 80 plus bronze PSU. I bought the Seasonic ages ago, before I picked up the case, in the hope that I was going to do a relatively low-powered beige build. But then when I realized I wanted an RX 580, that's a little bit of a guzzler. So I quickly realized I'd need a more powerful PSU, started to look at options on eBay for picking up a silver PSU, because it has to be this silver color. When you see the PSU at the back of the system, it needs, I can't have a black one, you know, it's just not going to look right. So it needs to be this silver color, and it needs to have all the exposed cabling of various colors here. I don't want any sleeved cables or anything like that. Far too modern, far too nice. It was getting really difficult to find a power supply without spending stupid money on maybe like an Antec PSU. There was a lot of Antecs on there, a lot of Cooler Master PSUs as well. A lot of pretty bad Cooler Master PSUs. Nothing that was really shining out as being a nice little power supply for the build. So I thought, why not just use the free power supply that came with the case as well as the Seasonic unit. And I know a lot of guys are probably absolutely cringing at that right now, but it's not as bad as you may think, and we'll take a look at why in a minute. It looks like a fire waiting to happen, but it really is not. So we'll talk about that in just a second. Here we've got a 3D printed mount for an ATX PSU. We may or may not be able to use this. I've picked it up anyway. You can buy these on eBay or anywhere on the web, really. A lot of people are printing out these kind of things. Really handy for mounting a power supply where a power supply is not meant to be mounted. We may just have to do something a little bit more janky due to space, but I've picked up the mount just in case we can use it. Coming down into the other little bits and bobs, we've got another 80mm fan. This is again from Evercase. We are going to use this as our intake fan. We've already got one of these in the case as an exhaust, so this is our little intake for the front. And here we have a heatsink, because the internal temperature of this PC is going to be pretty damn high. We've got a heatsink here for our M.2 storage, which is nice. We'll attempt to use that. That's again from Brian, so just a little bit of fun there. Now onto the little bits and bobs. I picked up one of these. This is a USB 3.0 header to 2 USB 3.0 ports. The reason I picked this up is because the case does not have any front USB 3, obviously, and then I can still utilize the USB 3 ports if I want to. This little half-height PCI bracket, we can unscrew this, and then I believe this whole portion here will screw into one of those blank connectors at the back of the case, one of those knockouts. So that's my thinking. I haven't measured it, I haven't really put any thought into it, but I think it will work. If not, we may be able to mod the case to fit that in, or maybe we'll just forget about it entirely, but it's there as an option. Next up, we have one of the key components that is going to be vital in making this PC even just a moderate success, and this is the dual PSU adapter. So this is not an essential piece of kit. You don't absolutely need these if you want to run 2 power supplies, but it is recommended because the beauty of this thing is you can start both PSUs at exactly the same time, which gets rid of the few of the negatives of using 2 power supplies. If you can deliver juice to the whole system at once when you press the power button, that is kind of half the battle. Then if you can post, that's kind of the next battle, and then you're on to a winner, hopefully. So this is an adapter, looks complicated, it really isn't. We'll explain more about this later on. Another little treat from Brian that he included in his package. He gave me a lot of stuff, really lovely. All this for free as well. This is a GPU support bracket, but what I really like about this one is it's kind of nothing special. It's a very basic looking one, no bells, no whistles. It just looks really simple. So I think that'll be handy to hold up this absolutely massive graphics card in this case We may not need it, but again, maybe needed. This little device here is a USB 2.0 to multi-USB 2.0 header. We're going to need a lot of USB 2.0 headers in this case, so we've got a splitter here. I think it splits it out to 4 headers here on the board, which is handy. Then we've got a USB 2.0 to standard USB-A socket there, because we need this guy. This is a floppy connector to USB 2.0. So we're gonna kind of go in the motherboard, out of that, into that, out of that, into that, out of that, and then into our floppy drive, because we are retaining a floppy in this system. Now, cool story behind this floppy drive is I used to have loads of them, but I must have chucked them all away or something. I can't find any. So I needed to find a floppy drive. At the same time, I was bidding on this guy because, as I told you, one of the goals for this build was to fill absolutely every external bay in the case. I knew I wanted to put a Beige card reader in here, so I found the Beige card reader. This is, again, a USB device, so that's why we needed a little bit of additional USB on the inside of the case. I found this, and the seller messaged me to say, hey, do you need anything else? And I was like, I don't suppose you happen to have a floppy drive? And the seller just sent me not 1, but 2 floppy drives. He gave me a spare one, just like Will, so it's gonna look something like that in the front of the case. Love the fact that it's super yellowed and dirty, looks flipping awesome, and is exactly the vibe I'm going for. So there is the build. Everything is looking absolutely crazy. You guys can now tell just how out there this is gonna be. But one goal for this, I want everything to work. I don't want everything to be in here for show. All of this stuff, or as much as humanly possible, I want it to work. So that is the goal. We're gonna give it our best shot. There's all the parts. Yeah, let's do it. So one of the first things that we've got to do is check out these power supplies. I think we're going to start with the unit, the brand new unit that came with the case, the Fireball PSU. Now this is indeed, and I sort of stated my suspicions in the Evercase video, but I wasn't entirely sure at all. This is indeed an FSP power supply. It's a fairly decent unit, and again, someone on IMNC Nerdy Natters was able to decipher exactly which model this was. It's a basic PSU, no bells, no whistles, of course, quite an old model, but it is a sturdy model and reliable. It's not a fire waiting to happen. That's if it's in good condition and isn't gonna blow up imminently. So the first thing to do, the first port of call, is to take it apart and have a little visual. We're not gonna be able to do crazy extensive testing. I just don't have the equipment to do so, and really my proper test is going to be plug it into a system and see, does it catch fire? If it doesn't, then does it sort of work? That is gonna be the true test. I love the name, Fireball. I just think that is awesome. And again, these are super cheap from Evercase. I can't remember the exact cost, but it is something ridiculous. You get it completely free with the case. But then if you want to buy this on its own, I think it's something like £19 or £17 or something. Again, for a 360 watt unit. Apologies, 350 watt unit, this guy. Yeah, but still, just tremendous. Tremendous deal. So first things first, we're going to open it up, do a visual. If there's anything obvious, big, bulgy, leaky capacitors or anything like that, we will simply not use it. This is a brand new old stock unit, and I've got a feeling it's going to be just fine, but it's important to check. Been in the warehouse a long time. Okay. There we go. Wow. Wow. Yeah, super clean on the inside. Looking absolutely lovely. It's definitely brand new, not a speck of dust. And the other thing that I'm looking at whilst I'm in here, guys, is the suitability of a certain mod that I am toying with the idea of doing. Just looking at where the power comes in here and the way that the power switch is wired up. It looks like this guy is going to be very suitable and easy for me to perform the mod that I've got in mind, but I will probably not include my thoughts about that in part 1. That is going to be something further on, maybe? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see how these video parts work out, but yes, my plan here, basically to give you guys a hint, one of the downsides about using 2 power supplies is the fact that you then have 2 power cables. And I really don't want that. I really don't. I want a a couple of things. Firstly, I want just one power cable, and I also want the one power switch on the system to turn off and on both power supplies. And looking at the way this is built, I don't think that's too much of a tall order at all, but obviously it's really not recommended to go fiddling around inside power supplies. But yeah, that looks great to me. So I'm gonna pop that lid back on. I think the biggest danger about me fiddling around in power supplies today is just the sheer amount of sweat that is potentially gonna land in these units. That is the biggest fear, I think. Any mod I do could be safer than the dripping state of this. My network rack is reporting that the rack itself is 44 degrees internal temperature, which is far too uncomfortable. My router is reporting 57-degree operating temperature, which is not suitable. Like I say, I currently don't have a fan. So before we open the next one up, I may not have fancy power supply testing tools, but I do have one of these basic off-the-shelf power supply tester majiggies, which are probably better than nothing. So let's have a little look at this. This will be first test of the Beige power cable as well. Lovely, brand spanking new IEC lead. How exciting is that? We're gonna set that to off, plug in the Beige beauty. Oh man, look at that. See, this is what I want. I want the Beige power cable to go into the silver power supply unit at the back of the Beige case and have this little power switch dictate the power for the whole system, regardless of the two power supplies. There we go, we'll plug that in just a moment. Let's get our power supply tester. Oh man. Oh, this is ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. It is far too hot. Okay, yeah, we're just gonna fire up with the 24-pin connector on this power supply. Let's plug it in. As I say, the biggest amount of danger is the amount of liquid that is coming from me at the moment. Moment of truth, everyone. Let's go, 3, 2, 1. Woohoo! Power supply fan is spinning, that is good. Everything is looking sweet. It's beeping because it's trying to look for the 6 or 8 pin, I believe. Plus 5 volt, 12 volt, 12.8, 3.4. It's looking pretty good, guys. 12 volt and 5 volt. Lovely. And SATA. Lovely. Should we take a look at our little floppy connector just for fun? Nice. Floppy connector is good also. Okay, sweet. That is looking lovely, folks. We're gonna power that off. So we know the power supply at least boots. We've got no load. Obviously these testers are, you know, taken with a pinch of salt, but at least they spin the power supply up and give you some sort of reading before you've got to risk it on your system, so that's sweet. So that is the Firebull power supply, 350 watts. This is going to be the PSU that we use dedicated for our GPU in the system. I'll explain a little bit why that is again in a minute. So that is one PSU out of the way. Now let's test the next PSU. First of all, we're going to start with the visual. Again, this is a Seasonic unit, so not a cheap unit by any means. Older, yes. Cheap and rubbish, no. And this is something that I want to address quickly. Similar to the hard drive rant that I had in an episode recently, where I had to kind of say, you know, whenever anybody installs a hard drive in a system these days, or even mentions a hard drive, people are like, oh no, it's gonna die. Help, run away. One of my cameras, I just had to restart the recording because that camera just stopped working, I presume because of the heat. It's absolutely boiling. Yeah, as I was saying anyway, people see a silver power supply and instantly think, oh my gosh, your PC is gonna blow up. Look at that horrible PSU. When in reality, modern PSUs are only black because they wouldn't sell any silver ones. You know, it's in at the moment to have a black PSU. They look good. These do not look good. So yes, there are a lot. Oh, look at that. See, straight away the fan is unplugged. There are a lot of terrible power supplies lurking, don't get me wrong, but there are also a lot of decent power supplies that are silver in color lurking, and this happens to be one of them. This is a Seasonic unit. This is also a 350 watt unit, so we'll have 700 watts available to us overall, give or take. Active PFC, 80 plus bronze. This is not a bad power supply, although it is used, and the fan was unplugged, so lucky we opened it up. I'm gonna give this a little bit of a blow with some compressed air. I haven't yet got my nice air station set up and running. Oh man, yeah, that is looking nasty in there. I can tell this power supply has had definitely a decent amount of use just by the dust on the fan is looking really pretty dusty, but that's all good. We just need to test it at the moment. Before we put it in the PC, we will open it up again and clean it. But the main reason for opening up this power supply today was just to take a little look at it and see if everything is looking okay and if there's anything obvious. And yes, there was something obvious. The fan wasn't plugged in, but everything else is looking okay other than a bit of dust. Nothing obvious bulging to me there. Okay, cool. So what we're gonna do is plug the fan back in, which is gonna be easier said than done. Yeah, this is gonna be difficult. Right down in there. Oh, guys, what is going on, man? Oh, amazing. Apparently, this hot weather is meant to end tomorrow. Good, because I am nerd. I like computer. I do not like hot weather. Only like computer. Oh, come on. All right, guys, we are going to extreme measures. I can't get that back in. We're going to cut that loose. That cable tie retains the cable harness itself coming out the back of the PSU. So without that, we can move this, but then we've got to be very careful because the strain is on the board. But doing that means that I can remove that and I can get to the connector. Ah, beautiful. Beautiful. Okay, so I'll have to remember when we put this back together, when we clean it properly next time, to reapply the cable tie there. That's the nice thing about making these videos, is because I edit this later on, of course, I don't forget those things, at least most of the time. Okay, so let's plug her in. So this Seasonic is looking good as well, folks, in terms of the majority of the numbers, as far as I'd trust a tester like this anyway. So we know that it powers up, we know that it's not blowing up and bursting into flames, the fan is spinning, numbers look relatively okay. Obviously, we haven't done the major test yet. Floppy connector, yes. +12, +5, sweet. That is looking good. Let's turn that off. Nice and quiet on that guy as well. We are ready to actually test this with a system now. Let's unplug this guy, dry up some of this moisture. Okay, sweet. So it is time to take a look at the motherboard. Brand spanking new. This is one of the only brand new components in the build. Actually, if we think about it, the brand new components are the Fireball power supply, the case, and the motherboard. Everything else is used. So here's the board. We only need the board for now, so let's just get this out of the package. We don't need anything else from within the box. There we go. This is looking like a really sweet board for the money. Really, really nice. Wow. It's also got as well, which I wasn't expecting at this price point, it's got sort of like the reinforced PCIe slot here for the video card with the metal here. It doesn't have it on the second slot, but yeah, that's looking like quite a nice board. We've got everything and more that we could possibly desire on here, but all we need to do first of all is install the components. So let's make a start and install the CPU. Oh, and as well, I've just realized that we're gonna need to remove this mounting hardware because we're putting on the stock cooler. 4 screws, the 2 retention brackets, and then the little back plate that comes on the board, because the cooler for the 3600 does not require that. So here we are again. Hello, my old friend. Lovely CPU this. Again, it wasn't a necessary upgrade for me to go up to the 3900X. That was not necessary, but it was a good bit of fun to do so. And my PC is running really nicely now, my main system. So the trick for this will be not to get any sweat in the CPU socket, guys. There we go. So there's the CPU locked into place. I'm gonna need some thermal paste as well for this. I do have some of that somewhere. Here's our lovely stock cooler. Okay, we've got some MX4. That's probably super dried out in the drawer. Oh yeah. Now you can all comment as much as you like about my messy application of thermal grease. I will not cover that up. I could edit that out, you know, cut to put in the cooler on, but say what you will, it's in it's in theme with this build, most definitely. So let's get the fan on. We'll have to put it on. Do you know, that bothers me somewhat. You can't choose to put it on with the AMD logo facing the correct way. We have to put it on this way. Oh yeah, we need a backplate for the cooler to actually mount to. Okay, fresh battery applied. Oh, I bet you guys very much enjoyed that. We need a backplate, you know. I just suddenly got confused and thought that this stock cooler would have all of the necessary hardware with it. Where do we screw the cooler, man? Onto the backplate that you've removed, you absolute sweatbox. So that is on. That needed a fair bit of flex on the old board there, more than I'm used to. Let's plug in the CPU fan header. CPU fan header in. Okay, next up, guys, is the memory. We are just gonna go for gold and try and get it to post with all the RAM and the GPU and the 2 power supplies. So really, our troubleshooting is gonna be very, very interesting if this doesn't quite work out. Let's open all our slots. Yeah. Yeah. How sick does that look, guys? The blue memory in the red and black slots. It looks pretty sick. Yeah, sweet. Look at that, guys. Very nicely populated. Amazing. Okay, next up is our lovely GPU. And we also need some adapters, don't we? Oh, this is gonna get good. So if we move our little test bench off the frame for a sec and we focus on just our GPU. Again, big thanks to Joe for sending this over. He gave me a nice deal on this. Let's have a look, guys. Woohoo. What I love about this card is it's a chunky monkey, but it's not too long. So for these old beige cases, it's not gonna be too crazy. It certainly is flipping heavy though. And I'm gonna be very careful with it on a little test bench like this. There it is, massive, massive GPU. Looking really sweet. Huge cooler. Takes up 2 slots on the back, but it's triple height because the cooler is so huge. Big red devil branding on it. Requires 1 6-pin, 1 8-pin. I thought it was 2 8-pins. 1 6, 1 8. A couple of switches on the side here. We've got BIOS, OC, or silent. We're gonna go for OC, obviously, because it's a priority. This system needs to make plenty of noise. And LED switch. So we don't want LED, but we'll figure out which way is on and off soon. This has got an LED in it somewhere. Sweet. Okay, let's get our motherboard back up here and let's clonk in this GPU. There we go. Oh my God. Look at the size of that. There we go. That's our GPU. Flipping heck. Okay, so next we just need to cable up this system with our power supplies. So what we're going for here is this power supply. The Fireball is going to do the GPU. And the Seasonic is going to do the system overall. So let's try and get this wired up sensibly. So for this to work out, guys, we are going to need to think what we're doing here. First of all, we need the dual PSU adapter and we're going to need our graphics adapters. So we'll do that in a minute. Let's get this fired up first of all. So what this basically does, if we take a look at what this adapter is doing, it plugs one side into the motherboard, the other side into your 24-pin of your primary PSU, and then whichever secondary PSU you want to use, you'll plug in here. And all this does is it takes our green and our black, the 2 wires that we usually use to jump the power button. That's an indication of exactly what this adapter does. It just allows the power button to trigger both PSUs at the same time. As it jumps those 2 pins on, of course, the one that's plugged into the motherboard and the one that is plugged into this little adapter here. So that is all it does, and it allows for that simultaneous powering up of both PSUs. Just gets you that little step closer. So because this is our secondary power supply, we need to plug in the 24-pin to just this guy. Now, it's not strictly necessary to use the other 4 pins, but we'll do so anyway. Just for the sake of completeness, we'll get these 4 pins in there as well, like that. So there's that in there. That's our secondary power supply that is going to be powered up. And then we get our first power supply, primary power supply, out of this spaghetti junction here somewhere. We will plug this in, plug that in there. Then we can plug this into our motherboard. So I think for this, if we kind of rotate the system this way, this is probably the easiest for us. Okay, cool, that's plugged in. Second order of business is getting our 8-pin plugged in up here. Now, in terms of sharing power supplies, it is important, you guys can see as well, I haven't properly reassembled this Seasonic. That is probably not good. You'd obviously want to double check that the casing is properly fitting when you reassemble that, but we won't worry about that too much at the moment. We're taking that apart again anyway. Just hope it doesn't short out or anything on the case. It shouldn't do. Just separating our cables here. Here's my 8-pin EPS. That can go in there. And that's another thing about using 2 power supplies. If you're powering the majority of the system with the 1 power supply and then just using the secondary power supply for something power hungry like a GPU, you're less likely to run into issues rather than say if you use 1 power supply for the 24-pin and another power supply for the 8-pin. Yeah, not good. It's still not really a true separation, however, because if you think about it, we're delivering 75 watts to the GPU already from the primary power supply. This is providing the PCIe power, but we're getting 75 watts through the slot in the motherboard already to this GPU. So there's no such thing as exclusively powering a GPU from a secondary power supply because it already receives power from the slot. But that's just a minor detail. The last thing we've got to get hooked up is, yeah, by the way, we've got no boot drive in the motherboard. That doesn't matter. We're not going to be installing an OS today. We just want to see if this posts. Last thing we're going to be hooking up is the adapters. Let's do our 8-pin first. We're going to do that off this guy. 1. How sketch is this? 2. 3. Okay. Now another adapter. Luckily, we've got some more Molex connectors here. We've got exactly 4 on this power supply, so just the right amount. You want to know another cool thing about not having sleeved cables, guys? Is it's really easy to see at a glance what order this stuff plugs in. Oh, come on. You adapter, you are not gonna go in there, you come on. So I've just had a little dig through my drawer to see if I've got another one of these Molex to PCIe adapters. And the reason for that is because this particular Molex connector is made really, really badly. It's finished off really badly. So this pin here is longer than the others and the alignment is so bad, but I can sort of contort that a little bit to try and get it into the connector. These don't have to come back off either. Anyway, right. That will do. And then, can we split off these additional 2 pins? Yeah, there we go. 6-pin into there. Okay, so we've got, what a crazy setup. We have got 6-pin, 8-pin GPU, 8-pin EPS, 24-pin. Everything is hooked up. Okay, all we need now is some power cabling for the power supplies. And we should be able to do this. So we're going to use the Beige for the primary power supply. Then I'm going to grab another IEC cable for now. As I said, the eventual goal is to have just the one IEC cable. Haha, check this out, guys. I found one of these beautiful old PowerMac cables. This will do the second power supply beautifully. So let's plug in this guy. Wonderful. Now power is off on that power supply as well. So for this, I've recently stolen my HDMI cable from this monitor to use on something else. So I'm going to use this lucky gold one that I seem to have. I think it looks really cool and it will help the system post, obviously. Okay, that's plugged in. Let me find some keyboard and mouse. Okay, we only need a keyboard for now. Let's plug that in the USB 2. Okay, so this is moment of truth. Let me get a little thingy-majig. Let's power up the power supplies. So let's start with the Seasonic. And now the Firebull. Ah, bugger. Interesting. When I turn just that guy on, the system powered on. That's interesting. Okay, let's try pressing the power button and seeing what we get, because obviously the GPU wouldn't have had enough juice. There we go. Okay. Guys, the system is on. GPU is lit up. GPU fans are spinning. Nothing on the display yet. Then again, this monitor. Oh my word. What the hell? Oh man. So this absolutely crazy system actually posted. Keyboard's working. So, wow. We're in. 2 power supplies. Yeah, we're running off the, oh my word, I actually have no idea how this is working. Absolutely no idea, because let's look at all the variables we've got here. So yes, it's a brand new motherboard. Everything else is used, apart from this PSU. What? All the RAM, this is unreal. Let's have a look at our memory. Memory, 2133. Okay, cool. So I was right initially. This is 16 gigs overall. They're each 4 gigs a piece. So that's absolutely groovy, guys. That's on 2133. We need to enable XMP, but that's all cool. Yeah, storage, we haven't got anything at the moment. Fan stuff. Wow, how do you get into advanced mode on the MSI boards? F7 settings, OC. This is a nice interface. Okay, there we go. Profile 1. Let's try that. Save and exit, F10, yes. Let's just see if this XMP profile will work for the memory. See if we can get 3000 megahertz. I can't believe we're worried about the speed of the memory right now. I was expecting 10 times the issues with this system. I thought we'd be plugging, unplugging, trying different things. Let's see what she does. Rebooting and stuff may be a bit funky with the 2 power supplies. I don't even know. She is straight back up. What have we got? Memory, 3000 megahertz, baby. Oh my word. What is happening right now? What is happening? I gotta snap a pic of this craziness. It's just unreal, man. Get a sweat towel in there. What the hell is that madness? Okay, sweet. So that is working, guys. That is working absolutely beautifully. I don't know about you guys, but I can't quite believe it. We are back, and thankfully we now have a working fan, plus it is not as warm today. The weather has finally sorted itself out a little bit, so we're going to get into a little bit more sensible and serious discussion territory now, sort of, maybe. It was absolutely crazy the other day. I can't even believe that I managed to put this together. I still have the towel just in case things do get a little bit toasty, but we should be okay without it. So first thing I want to do really quickly is get the SSD installed, and I want to do this in episode 1 here, because then we've got all of the core components working together. I think once we can prove they all work, the rest is kind of, well, I'm not going to say straightforward, but this leaves us, I think, in a good place to stop episode 1 once we get this guy installed. So this SSD is covered in what looks to be some kind of heat spreader type dealio. It's kind of worn off anyway, so we're going to take that off. Yeah, this is indeed a Western Digital Drive PCSN530 NVMe SSD 1 terabyte. Date code is July 2020, so this is a fairly newish drive. So let's balance that on the CPU fan for a second while we take a look at this cool heatsink thing. Not sure if this is going to fit this drive. Ah, cool. That's pretty nifty, actually. Okay, sweet. So we've got quite a few things here. We have got the instructions. So these clamps keep the heatsink in place and secure around the SSD. We've got some thermal pads, and then the heatsink itself. Ooh, nice. Okay. This is definitely the right size, which is nice. If we just kind of test fit that for a second. Yeah, there we go. You can see that is perfect. And actually looks really cool. Let's try and get this fitted then, get rid of that sticker. First thing I'm doing is peeling off this existing sort of, I presume this is like a heat spreader type thing. You'll have to forgive me, guys, I don't really know what's what with these SSDs. Yeah, I'm gonna have to scrape this off bit by bit, I think. So I've just plopped a little bit of the old alcohol on this here drive, just to scrape off. Probably better using a plastic scraper so I don't get it all scratched up. Here we go. Yeah, as you can see, this is coming off pretty gunky, but nice and easily. I just want to ensure a good contact. There are no chips here, of course, on the underside, but still, I want all this to stick on properly. That is looking okay to me. The sooner we cover this up, the better, because it's so sticky. Okay, important thing on the instructions here for this heatsink, the thermal pad, which is 1mm, goes above the board. Thinner thermal pad, which is 0.5mm, goes under the board, in line with the back plate. So let's do the underside first, because that's the stickiest. Okay, let's get this layer. Nice. That's one side. Not the neatest job. Get this side. Lovely, there's the other side. Okay, so in our little sandwich of drive here, back plate, nice, main heatsink, lovely. And now, let's clip it together. Okay, sweet, nice. That was a little bit tight, I had to bend those clips because it's quite chunky at the back here. But that's definitely making good contact. That is a good sandwich right there. That's really pimped our drive, isn't it? Worth doing for sure. I hadn't noticed before as well, but this is an EK heatsink. Nice, I can officially say I've got an EK part. Oh no, no, don't unclip. Looks like I bent that a bit too much. Get back on there. There we go. That's better, that's perfect. Okay, cool. Let's plug her in. Sorry guys, just realized I need to move this into this position, and then I need to get a screw, possibly from the box that all this is sat on, which is quite annoying. So with that like that, I can plug that in. That sits down perfectly like that, but I need a little screw. So I'm gonna have to be careful and kind of maneuver this. Oh, I've got it. I've got it. Don't like this. Do not do that. Okay, sweet. I feel like I'm really pushing my luck in this video. Seriously. So here's the tiny SSD screw. Let's get this out. I do not fancy losing this screw because this is not the kind of thing I have spares for. Okay, there we go. That was a strange little SSD screw. It was just constantly cross-threading, and I'm still not 100% convinced about the way that it's screwed in. I mean, it's holding the drive in there, so that's absolutely fine, but I think that's going to be a little bit of a nightmare if we have to chop and change things with this system. So hopefully that SSD works. I think we'll fire this up right now and take a look. Okay, so let's see if everything with this system still works. Little spin on the fan there. It's strange when you first turn the power supplies on, isn't it? There we go. Okay. Let's have a little look and see if our lovely SSD is detected. Is the monitor on? Yes, the monitor is on. Okay, MSI. Reboot and select proper boot device. That's a good sign. So that shows us that that we have indeed got a successful SSD install here. This time we'll mash delete, get into the BIOS. I'm so pleased that this system continues to boot up. Even after I picked it up and messed around with it and things. Board Explorer. Oh, how cool is this? Oh man, I want to try this. Hang on, where's my mouse? Okay, I've got a cable for my mouse. Mouse is plugged in. So let's have a look and see what it does. Hey, check it out. When I hover over that, it detects the drive. WDC PC SN530. 1TB SSD. That's really cool. Let's see if we can get a little bit more information on it from somewhere. There we go. There's our M2 port. So nothing in the SATAs, but in M2.1, we have the Western Digital SSD. So that works just fine, which is great. So there's all our core components, all working. This is everything we need to get a system up and running. I could install an OS on here now and we'd have a functioning computer here. Great news, fantastic result. This is the best possible result that I could have wished for episode 1. Before we go, I just want to touch a little bit more on the power supply side of things and why we chose to use the Firebull PSU for the graphics card and the Seasonic for the rest of the system. The reason for that was simply because the Seasonic seems to be a little bit more appropriate for the rest of the system. It physically has more connectors, it has the 80+ bronze rating, it's generally newer, and it also has a little bit of a better balance of power across the rails. So I believe the Seasonic does something like 313 watts on the 12 volt rail max, whereas the Firebull is rated for around 270, I believe, 276 watts on 12 volt 1 and 2. So in terms of the power that the graphics card requires, an RX 580 requires about 185 watts. This Red Devil version OC maybe a little bit more, so let's call it 200 watts max. It can draw up to 75 watts from the PCIe slot. It can draw an additional 75 watts from the 6-pin connector, and then PCIe 8-pin is rated all the way up to 150 watts. The adapters themselves, the Molex to PCIe power, generally considered super sketchy, but actually not as bad as they sound. The Molex connector is capable of delivering about 130 watts at 12 volts. So that's not additive, that's exclusively 12 volts. That's not taking into account the connector's capacity to deliver 5 volt power. But looking at just 12 volt exclusively, you can get safely up to about 130 watts of power draw through a Molex connector. You've got 2 on each of the 8-pin adapters to deliver the required power. So no, it's not an ideal setup, but as much as we'd like it to be, it's also not really a fire waiting to happen either. There are a lot jankier and a lot worse things that you could do with a setup like this. Now, don't get me wrong for a second, it is not ideal. There is no reason to use 2 PSUs in 2024. There is absolutely no reason whatsoever. They make gigantic PSUs, so you can throw the biggest possible graphics cards in the system and power them from one PSU. Even if you've got a super beefy rest of your system, it's just not a problem anymore. There was a time where you could spec out a system to have hardware that would exceed the maximum power output of the biggest available power supply on the market. Those times are long gone. So the reason for using 2 here is for entertainment purposes, and these are the 2 power supplies that I actually have. So this avoided us buying another power supply entirely. Although you could argue that the £10 or so spent on the dual PSU adapter and maybe a further £5 or £6 spent on the Molex to PCIe adapters, 15, 16 quid, couple that in with the resale value of the Seasonic, I could have probably picked up something like a Corsair CX 400, 430, whatever they are. That would have powered the whole system just fine, but that's far too boring. Far too boring. It's much more fun to use the 2 power supplies. So I think that's a good place to leave episode 1. We've put the heatsink on the SSD, we've put the SSD in, and it's confirmed working. And then of course, on the previous session, the sweaty session, we got the whole system working. So CPU, all the RAM, RX 580, 2 power supplies on this lovely MSI board, all up and running. This is the foundation, the meat and potatoes of the Beige build. So stay tuned for episode 2. Next time we're going to be modding one of these power supplies. That's going to be crazy. We're going to stick it all in the case, hopefully, and possibly get it powered up. It depends what hiccups and bumps we discover along the way. So stay tuned. Episode 2 is going to be awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching, and I'll see you in episode 2.